It's good to start the recording. The speech communication process. All right? I kind of described this the other day in that PowerPoint, which was a weird PowerPoint. I've got that on video, so now we know. The speech communication process does this. Starts with a speaker, somebody who's got a message. Okay, so I'm the speaker, or when you're giving your speeches, you'd be the speaker. And we all have a message that we want to get across, correct? The message is whatever it is we intend to say. Okay? So we send that message through a channel that goes to an audience member. So if we're in here, in this classroom, the speaker is whoever's talking, the message is what's being said, and it's going to whoever's in the audience, which is you guys right now. Got it? That channel is what we call a direct channel. The direct channel means there's nothing in between us but air. So when I say something, you can easily hear it, hopefully. Does that make sense? Now, obviously, if you have hearing aids or hearing issues or anything like that, that can cause what we call interference, right? That stupid ticking sound causes interference.
It's also noise.
Yes.
Based on the test.
On the book that you guys are using, they call it noise. It's interference. It's the same thing. Okay. Technically, I like the word interference better because it's not always noise that causes interference.
Interference was the wrong answer, by the way, on the test. It's noise.
It is noise. That's the term that they're using. But technically, interference is better. Because again, it's not always noise that causes interference. It could be the cars driving down the road. Not the audio that we hear of the car, but that we see movement and it automatically draws our attention. Does that make sense? That's interference as well. So the speaker, so imagine there's a person here, sends a message to the audience through a channel. The audience then processes that message, right, through their own basic understandings based on their culture, based on their background, based on their education, based on all the things that make them who they are. Got it? Then they send feedback back to the speaker. Does that make sense? So feedback is anything that tells the speaker whether the audience understood what was being said. In other words, did they understand the message the way it was intended to be presented? Make sense? Anywhere along this whole process, you can have interference or noise. Okay? Because when I send the message, it can be interfered or noise could stop it from getting to you the way it's intended. If that little ticking noise just really irritates you the entire time, and that's all you're concentrating on, you're not listening to what I'm saying, it's that noise that's going to get me, right? That would cause a lot of interference. If there was somebody with OCD or something, that would be, especially if that tick wasn't even, that would really throw some people off, right? Or if somebody has noise, there's certain people that noise just really irritates them, that would be one of those things that would do it. That's a hint for anybody that watches this video that showing the importance. There's something causing noise. Hey, you want to jump up there and unplug that thing?
Sure.
He said, sure.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. There's no cameras.
You're the only one. You're the only one that's tall enough.
You could do it. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Like for real?
Yeah.
Yes, for real.
Just be careful. Don't fall or anything.
I'm not that.
I don't know if it'll stop it.
No, I appreciate it, but thank you.
I don't know how.
If I do fall,
Dude. You saw I said dude again. Did you hear it?
Yeah, so you may not be tall. Yay.
Hold on. Wait.
It's done.
Nice.
thank you for saving
Thank
my
I
life.
doubt.
Extra credit.
Anybody?
We have some extra credit.
Yeah, I actually
Yeah, sure.
parked in the faculty spot, so maybe that'd be my.
No, 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 this time.
pass. So,
Yeah, you get extra credit. I'll get your name later.
sweet.
The tall guy.
Yeah, the tall guy.
Yeah, the tall guy, I guess.
Anyway,
The
you have to
brave
plug it back in before we leave.
Okay. All right.
No, they'll know who did it.
2 tears in a bucket.
They'll know who did it, and they'll say, "Do you know who did it?" I said, "Well, I've got video, but I'm not going to show it to you." No, it can be. Anyway, so now we got rid of the interference, the noise, and we did get rid of the noise. Wasn't that great? Now I'm not going to be able to concentrate because there's no noise. So, speaker sends a message through a channel to the audience. The audience then gives feedback back to the speaker. The feedback can come in 2 ways. Verbal, that sucks. That's feedback. It's not good feedback, but it could be good feedback because it means you're terrible or what you're saying is terrible. Okay? Or it could be nonverbal. The deer in the headlight look, which is harder to do in a face mask. Okay? But any of those things will tell a speaker, if they're paying attention, oh, they didn't understand. So maybe I need to adjust what I'm saying and say it in a different way or in a different tone or something. Does that make sense? Maybe I need to be louder. Maybe I need to be softer. It all depends on what the situation was and what was going on. Does that make sense to everybody? So, speaker sends a message through the channel to the audience. The audience then sends feedback back to the speaker, and anywhere along the line, they can get interference. This is like 12 pages of notes in one little. And this was what I was going to show you. This will be on Blackboard, so you'll be able to see this anyway.
Good, 'cause it looks like fish from here.
It's definitely not fish.
What is that? What are you showing us? Like, I see it, but what is it?
It's PowerPoint.
No.
This is the speech communication process.
What is-
Speaker sends a message through the channel to the audience, then they give back feedback.
Oh, okay.
So it's showing you that this is a circular process.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the other part about it is the situation. The situation is the time and the place that this process takes place. Okay, why would that be important?
If it's in the morning, you're tired, not as receptive. If it's in the evening, you might be hungry. So the time and the place. If you're
So I
in
ask this
Dallas-
question a lot to a lot of classes, and I get the same thing. There's no good time to give a speech. In the morning, you're tired. Lunchtime, you're thinking about food. In the afternoon, you want a nap from lunch. In the evening, you're thinking about food again. So there's really no good, no. It is important to know that if you're giving a speech at a certain time, there may be things that could cause interference before you even get started. Let's say you're doing a benediction. You know what that is? Explain what that is to those who don't know.
A benediction to me is, I can give examples. Can I do that? Like
Sure.
if you're speaking in front of a school, a lecture type thing about a person, maybe?
Could be. I'm thinking more along the lines of a prayer before a
Okay.
dinner.
I was thinking funeral, but okay.
You see what I'm saying? Or a funeral, but more so during a dinner.
Okay.
So if I'm giving a benediction, a prayer,
A toast?
a toast could be, but let's say I'm giving a toast at a wedding, that could be one of those. But if I'm doing a prayer before dinner, before a meal, then typically speaking, that benediction is going to be very short. Why? Because if I'm sitting there listening to this benediction and there's a salad on my plate, that salad's going to be gone before that prayer is done. And maybe somebody else's salad next to me. You see what I'm saying?
Your focus is.
When there's food already in front of you, or there's the anticipation of it, that will distract audiences. So you don't want these, and let's face it, a lot of pastors are known for really extending those things out, right? And that's not a bad thing. But it does seem like it when you're waiting for a meal, and it's like, come on, Pastor, you can speed that up a little bit, you know? So that's the kind of thing we're looking at here.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then why would they have meals and marketing, like conventions type, what do you call it, where you're in the audience and you're listening to the spiel so that you can either partake in their investments, their insurance, or whatever the.
Why would they have food meals?
Yeah, because if you're.
What do you
focused on
think
a
brings
meal-
people in?
But if you're focused on a meal, you're not all there.
Right.
I'll come.
But how many of these things have you seen in the, either in the mail or you've received an email or something? Hey, if you come listen to our spiel,
You get a free
we'll give a
gift
free meal while you're there.
Gift card, blah, blah, blah.
That's why they do it, because
People-
free food brings people in.
But if you're focused on the meal, you're not listening to the spiel.
They don't care.
Okay.
In some cases,
It's
it
just
doesn't.
a draw.
In some cases, as a salesman, my job is just to get you there. And if that's how I get you there, I get counted for some numbers. Now, if I can close the deal, I get more numbers and maybe a bonus or something.
I didn't mean to get you off track.
Yeah, no, but it goes along with it. That's the kind of thing. But again, that goes into this whole, the situation makes a difference. Because if I'm just there for the free food, I don't care. Just like if you go down to Myrtle Beach, they've got those condo cells. If you come, we'll give you 2 free nights in our condo. And all you gotta do is listen to a 30-minute spiel, it's actually 90 minutes or so, spiel about our condos. People going, they don't care about that spiel, they're just doing it because they get 2 free nights, big deal. And all you gotta do is keep telling them no, and they'll keep sweetening the pot, give you more free to give, or give you 2 free $50 gift cards to one of the seafood restaurants in town. Or I give you this or that. It's like, keep going. Okay? So those are the kind of things. The situation will determine a lot of things. Let's say we were going to do a persuasive speech. Everybody know what that is, right? Trying to persuade somebody to one side or another of an argument. So if we were going to do a persuasive speech that was a patriotic speech, why we should be a patriot for America, is that an effective speech today based on society the way it is right now? If it's done in a certain way, yes. Right now, because of situations that are going on, that's a difficult speech to really plan and do right.
I think it depends on your audience.
A lot of it has to do with your audience. That's what that situation, time and place. Because your place makes a difference, right? The other thing is, let's say you did a patriotic speech just before 9/11. Effective? Just depends. Obviously in Fort Bragg, Fayetteville, it's going to be more effective because lots of people from military or military spouses or family or whatever. Now, imagine 1 month after 9/11. Pretty much effective anywhere. Correct? Almost everybody was doing them at that point. So you see what I mean? Time makes a big difference. The place makes a difference. A patriotic speech in Fayetteville, any time of the year, is going to be more effective, in theory, than, say, Chicago. Not because they're less patriotic, but you just assume a military town would have patriotic feelings, more or less. Does that make sense? So, and it's not because we are more patriotic, it's just the way it is. Does that make sense to everybody? So your time and your place can be extremely important and make a big difference on. Now, he said a key thing. You have to know your audience. Right? So how do you know your audience?
Just demographically, like you said, sir, like the location, the.
Let's look at it this way, since this is going on. All right. Is it raining? What? It's raining.
I just got a weather alert.
How am I supposed to go home in the rain? That was on the film, so you'll remember that. And you'll be like, Oh, I don't remember him doing that. Yeah. So let's say there's two things they do. They tell you not to speak about in public speaking. You know what they are?
Probably politics.
Politics and
Religion.
religion. There's problems with that. You know why? Name me one thing in our society. Hold on. Name me one thing in our society of any value that does not have to do with politics or religion. I'm waiting.
Sports?
Sports has nothing to do with politics or religion?
It shouldn't.
Oh, okay.
No, well, maybe it shouldn't, but should it be important? Sports has nothing to do with politics. Then why do they keep bringing baseball players and other athletes to Congress to testify about steroid use and other things?
That's not political.
What about food?
It is when Congress gets involved.
Everyone loves food.
If they're trying to petition Congress to create a law to stop football because it causes brain damage from people getting hit too hard, or to,
Better safety gear.
but you don't go to Congress for that. You go to the people who create the gear for that, right? But that's not what happens. They go to Congress. We need better gear. We need you to create a law that says we have to have better gear. You see what I'm saying? It makes it political. There's really nothing of value in our society that has nothing to do with politics or religion. In fact, most times it has a lot to do with both. Now, I will talk a lot about this because here's the other problem. Who does most of the speaking in America? Politicians and religious people. So it's almost impossible not to talk about them to some degree. Okay, so I will talk about them a lot, and I will equally bash all politicians. I don't care what side they're on, because I can bash all of them based on how well they speak. And I can also compliment them, no matter which ones they are, on how well they speak. Because some of them speak really well at times, and then not so well at other times. Even somebody like Barack Obama, who's really sounds really good at times. There's times when it's like, where was that guy? That's not the same guy. You know what I mean? But, you know, part of that has to do with the fact that, you know, once you become president, that changes things. Because now you're getting all these things in your head because of you've got all these meetings in the morning, the security meetings, telling you things that are going on that you never knew about beforehand. But now you know, because it's like, whoa. And now you got to make all these decisions, right? So that changes things. So now as president, Barack Obama, George Bush, George Senior Bush, whatever his name was, George Senior. They just called him Bush one. George W. was the younger one. Clinton, I started to say Al Gore, and I knew that was wrong.
Carter.
Yeah, Carter, he's still around. But it doesn't matter which president it is. Once they become president and they find out things that they're told on a daily basis, especially when things are going on like a war. So with Bush, we had a lot of war. You know, we had the Iraq War and all that stuff, right? Afghan and all that stuff, and even into Barack Obama's term. Okay? The thing with that is now they know things that are going on because they're being updated by the generals on the ground. They know where our troops are moving and where they're headed. But now they have to address the United States citizens to let them know what's going on. They cannot say things that are going to put them in a compromising position. Is there somebody out there? No?
No, it's just me.
Oh.
Maybe you're losing your audience because of politics.
It's the noise.
Well, that's all.
It's not the politics, it's the noise. But you get my point. There are sometimes they know things that they can't tell, so now they have to kind of watch what they say while they're saying it. And if you notice, Barack Obama, even though he was completely one of those that we say was really intelligent and spoke really clearly, he did a lot of ums and uhs, like that. And I'm going to argue that part of that is because he knows he can say something, but he can't say it the way he wants to. No, they don't. They have teleprompters. And so, but I guarantee you they're not staying exactly what's on that. Most of them. They're probably close to it. But again, so with Barack Obama, with him going and it's either because he's adjusting as he's going, what's on the thing, saying it the way he wants to say it, or they're not keeping up on the teleprompter. And if that's the case, that person's getting fired. You know what I'm saying? But again, they know things that they can't talk about, or they have to be careful how they address it. So it's crazy. But we'll end up, because I'll have to talk about politicians once in a while. And I'll mention some things about religious people. I'm not here none of us are going to try to convert anybody to any religion. That's not what we're here for. Nor are we here to bash any particular religion. It's one thing to bash a religious person that makes a stupid comment. It's another thing to bash the religion behind it. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? So, knowing your audience. How do you know your audience? If you were asked to go speak somewhere, tell me something you know about something about. Maybe you're an expert, maybe you're not, you just know a lot about it.
Guns.
Food.
Not about guns.
You know something about food?
Yes.
Is it about the eating of food or the making of food?
A little bit of both.
Because I know a lot about eating food.
I'm with you on that.
So let's say he was going to be asked to go address a good one. The Red Hat Society on how you make a certain meal that you're known to make. So how do you know who the audience is?
Oh, I could tell you.
I just,
You know who the Red Hat Society is?
people that wear hats.
They wear red hats. But you know who these people are?
Do they like food?
Probably, to some degree.
Does anybody else know who they are?
I'll give you a hint. I'm younger than they are, mostly.
You're younger than they are?
They're older.
Mature
They're a
generation.
mature. They're old women.
Oh.
I'll cut that part out of the video. No, they're older. They're older, mature ladies.
They're probably diabetics. They're probably.
Not necessarily.
They probably
Not
have
necessarily. You're just making conclusions.
They probably have.
But they are.
diet
They're typically in
restrictions.
their 60s or on up,
Oh, okay.
and they're all female.
Okay.
That's not a bad thing. That's just the thing. And they all wear red hats when they get together.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know. It's just something. I don't know. Somebody started this years ago, and
I could join out to it.
you can't. You're not female.
If I could.
So
How do you know that? Don't assume
I-
it's gender.
look, I'm not going to get into that whole thing because that's the Red Hat Society's determination of whether he gets to join or not. I mean,
Sounds like a good time.
it could be. I don't know. I've seen them at restaurants eating before, and they seem to be enjoying themselves. So, but you know something based on the name of the society. You didn't know, but you could have looked it up, right? Some of us instantly knew Red Hat Society. We got an idea of what this audience is. So we already knew something about the audience, right? What else could we determine from them?
From just the name or just regular?
Part of it.
They're a social club.
They're a social club. It's all about being social. Getting together and being social. Yeah. And obviously they like to eat because, like I said, I've seen them at several restaurants.
They like to craft too.
They like to craft too.
Probably like to cook.
Probably do like to cook, and probably because they're mostly, some of them are grandmothers who cook all the time for their kids and
Perhaps they're
grandkids.
wine drinkers.
I mean, perhaps. There's a good chance that they could be. So we know, we can guess certain things about them already, right? But if you know where you're going, a specific city or location, you can probably look it up and find out even more information about them.
Isn't that stereotyping?
What's that?
The whole-
Looking them up and telling them where,
No, I mean in general, knowing that they have red hats and they're elderly.
that's not stereotyping because they're Red Hat society. They are Red Hat people. And saying they're elderly, well, that's determined what you call elderly. Saying they're over 60 or whatever,
Mature women.
over 60 still counts. I don't know what the age, do anybody know what the age limit is? Don't they have a minimum limit or something, or do they? You don't think they do?
What?
Have a minimum age, or you just don't know what it is?
No, I don't know.
I'd have to look it up.
I will. I'm
That's
just-
important.
I've never seen these.
I've never seen anybody that looks young in them, but that doesn't mean anything either. You've never seen the Red Hat Society of Women?
What's the point? It's just like old ladies just like to hang out.
Basically, it's a social club.
Social club.
Is it based off like wealth or just like just?
No,
Not
has nothing to do with wealth.
It's almost like you having a motorcycle club, which is a social club. The
That's
Red Hat
exactly it.
Society it's just a social club. They get together, they
But-
might craft. they
but,
go
you
on
know,
dates.
back in the day, if you said it was a motorcycle club, automatically they were bikers. Ooh, bad group.
So it's,
Scared me.
Age 50 and beyond.
Age 50 and beyond. Okay, so I could join, you couldn't.
Okay.
I can join in 3 years.
It's almost like a fraternity or a sorority. They're
It basically
all
is.
social clubs.
Right.
So there, but they do have a website you can look up information.
But now it is open to women of all ages, because they don't exclude.
Even though it's 50 and up, they don't exclude?
Their colors are red and purple too. They wear red hats.
Yes,
but they also
wear purple dresses or
And
jumpsuits
the
or,
feather or the ribbon.
yeah.
That's what I picture like the old southern ladies with the big hats.
They do have, they usually do have the big hats. But again, it depends on the style of what's going on.
That's pretty cool though.
But again, that's just an example, okay? But you know what? She mentioned stereotyping. Where do we typically start? If I say Red Hat Society, don't we typically start stereotyping thinking? And then what you do is you research and go from there, which is basically what we did. So we started with a broad idea and we've narrowed it down
We also
some.
made assumptions that they're all old, and that not necessarily,
If it's 50 on up, they are,
but they don't exclude.
but they don't exclude. But I've never seen one, but that doesn't mean they are. Okay, but does that make sense? So, knowing your audience can make a big difference. In here, you all have to give speeches. Who's your audience?
Our classmates.
What can we gather from the fact that you're here about our audience?
We're all here to do the same thing. We're all here.
You're
to
all
do the
college
same.
students,
Yes.
right? You all must live somewhere within the vicinity of the college, or you wouldn't come here, correct? You must live in Cumberland County area, more or less.
My other classes, that's not the case. We have people that come from Aberdeen and all over. So-
You do, but typically they could go to a college near them, because they have community colleges in every county, more or less. But, yeah. But they may be coming here because they're not offering certain classes at the other. So, and that's based on the class. This kind of class is gonna be offered at every community college. Somebody's out in the hallway now.
You know, it's coming to take us
probably-
away for that.
It's probably. Or it's a student just now getting to class.
Or somebody looking for the bathroom.
It's downstairs. Nobody there.
Or some lady.
So that was good.
So the parking lot is in the back, right? That's where.
There's one back here, and then there's one over on this side.
Okay. I'll park-
Actually, there's technically two over on this side.
There's some in the front, and after a certain time, you can park in.
After 5 o'clock, you can park just about anywhere.
Okay.
Just about.
If it says Dean, don't park there.
Okay.
Everywhere else.
All right, let me give you some general information about public speaking. This is not stuff you need to know. This is just something that's useful to know. The oldest known handbook on effective speech was written in Egypt over 4,500 years ago. It's a long time. Just think, back in the old days, they had people who spoke publicly. Yeah. Well, that'd be public writing. Public speaking played a central role in classical Greece and Rome. They literally had people who would get up on a little pedestal, little thing, and just start talking, and others would gather around and listen for hours. Have you ever heard of that? Get on your pedestal, step on your pedestal and stuff? That's where it comes from. Eloquence, which is the art of speaking well. Anybody ever seen My Fair Lady? My Fair Lady is about a girl who's Cockney, she's lower class British, and she doesn't speak very well because she didn't grow up in a good family, and she's being taught by this guy how to speak properly and be a proper lady. So eloquence was prized in ancient India, Africa, and China, as well as among the Aztecs and other pre-European American cultures. In other words, it's something that we used to, more so than today, thought of it as a good thing. Somebody who can speak well, that's a good skill to have, correct? And right now, the only people we really say that should do that are politicians and lawyers and preachers. I mean, you would think instructors, although during modern times, men and women around the globe use public speaking to spread their ideas and influence. Wouldn't you agree? Here's some public speakers you might have heard of in the past. Franklin Roosevelt. Obviously, you can name any politician for this. Martin Luther King. Wouldn't you say he was a good public speaker?
Yes.
He had a lot of really good speeches. And he was very trying to find the right word for this. No, he was that. It's not that. He was very particular about how he said things. Because he knew how important it was the way he said it and made sure that it was said the way it needed to be said. Does that make sense? As opposed to some people who speak today who just are trying to create an emotion from people and not worried about making sure. So here's the thing. Martin Luther King wanted things to get better. I have a dream, right? He wanted everything to get better. There are people in society today on all sides, they don't care. They just want to get an emotion out of people, to make it feel like you're trying to be. So it's like, I want you to care about this issue, but I don't care where you come out on the other side. Does that make sense? There's a big difference in the way he very articulate and very pronouncedly made sure that he said the things the way he said, in a way that he was helping build people up as opposed to tearing things down. Does that make sense? So, how about this guy, Adolf Hitler? Would you consider him a good speaker? Yeah. Adolf Hitler was a great speaker. It's what he said that was not good. Does that make sense? The way he delivered the material, he was very charismatic for who he was. But let's face it, you cannot convince millions of people the ideas that he was convincing them without being charismatic and being persuasive. Yeah. Let's not mention that he was crazy, because he was. But there's a fine line between those things anyway. But does that make sense? He was very much a good speaker. He just was an evil person. Saddam Hussein?
Well, he had followers, so it must be yes.
I've never heard him speak.
He was actually a good speaker. But again, he was one of those who was a general in an army or whatever and took over the country and led the troops. But he maintained that through fear, just like Hitler did, as well as going out there and giving speeches that helped make them feel a little more comfortable about what they're doing. Okay? Jim Jones, anybody ever heard of this guy? Yeah.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Back in the 70s,
You're talking the rapper?
no.
No.
Jim Jones,
Oh,
Jim Jones was a self-proclaimed Messiah
Okay.
back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. He led, what was it, like 2,000 people
Yeah.
to commit suicide by drinking Kool-Aid
All right.
because he said that they were coming to get him. And it's true, the FBI was on their way to get him, but not to kill him, but to stop them. But he didn't drink the Kool-Aid, they did.
Mass suicide.
You didn't
Yeah.
even end up drinking it?
No,
He didn't drink it.
he convinced them to do it because otherwise, and if they did it, he'd see them on the other side.
Man, that's so.
Yeah. That takes persuasion. Obviously, again, insane or really evil, but
I watched a documentary on that recently.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
Wasn't it in like a foreign country?
It was in Africa.
he started out here,
Okay.
but because of the FBI and the IRS were coming after him, he went to Ghana or somewhere.
It was in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay.
He took the whole church.
The whole compound.
Whole compound and moved it to
Yeah.
Africa. And he intimidated these people because anytime when they have reporters come out and the reporters would say, well, do you want to leave? Come on, let's go. He would send his henchmen out and
Yep.
they gunned down a bunch of people and killed them and people from leaving.
He led them by fear
Yeah.
and by persuasion.
Wow. That's
And
terrible.
again, he convinced many of them to just, they were better off to drink the Kool-Aid knowing they were going to die on their own grounds as opposed to having the FBI shoot them or whatever.
Wow.
Which the FBI wasn't there to go shoot them.
Right.
It just happened.
So we could pretty much say any cult leader must be a good speaker, or they wouldn't have followers that embrace their ideals.
Yeah. Scared you, didn't it? What about, what's his name? Helter Skelter. Manson.
That dude.
Now, he did not have thousands. Yeah, he did not have thousands of followers like Jim Jones, but he did have his tight group of people
That dude was
that
weird.
even when he went to jail, in fact, did you know that they put him in jail for murder, having no evidence that he murdered anybody?
Oh, wow.
Because he never did it himself. His followers did it. And even years after, while they were all in jail, they still swore up and down that he was basically Christ. He was their God or whatever they wanted to say. I mean, he was the person. So, up to their deaths, a couple of them died not too long ago. The one that had the cancer, she died, a couple of years ago or something. Even up to her death, she was trying to get him free and get it. It's crazy. All right, public speaking and conversation, regular conversation. There's some similarities between the two, right? I mean, obviously you're speaking in both of them. Okay? So here are the 4 similarities I've got for you. There's 4 things you're trying to do when you're doing your conversation with somebody or you're trying to do a public speech. 1, you're trying to inform people about something. Hence the term informative speech. Make sense? But in general conversation, don't you, hey, guess what happened to me today? That's informative. Make sense? 2, to persuade people, to make them change their ideas or come to your side or whatever it may be. So you're trying to persuade people. Obviously in persuasive speech, that's what that is. But don't you do that with your friends too? Let's go to Mi Casita. Oh, but I don't like Mi Casita. I'd rather go to El Cazador? What is that place? What? El Cazador. But Mi Casita has a deal on it. Right? You're trying to persuade. To Speedy Gonzalez. Right? I personally don't care. I'll go to either one of them. But all 14 locations of Mi Casita. But you see my point. We try to persuade people, yeah, but you would really like to go here instead.
Okay.
No, let's not get carried away with it. I don't ask that part of it. I was like, all right, to entertain people. Don't we try to do this in public speaking? How so?
Like stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy is a form of public speech. Yeah. Don't we do that in other forms of public speaking? Politicians, religious people, whatever? Do they not use humor at times? They tell a joke. They try to entertain us because they know that entertainment gets our attention. Once they got our attention, it's easier to hold our attention. If you don't get their attention early on, guess what happens? It's harder to maintain. Does that make sense? Those are the three primary things that we're trying to do: inform, persuade, or entertain. The fourth one is actually something I added, but it's pretty much there today: to evoke an emotion from people. Don't we do that? And again, as I said, we don't always do it to get them to a certain location. We just do it to get them an emotion. Does that make sense? Right? So we want to get somebody. Why do we want to evoke an emotion from somebody? How do you get somebody motivated to do something if they don't care? So you find a way to make them care. Once you get them to care, guess what? Now they're pumped up, they want to do something. The problem is if you don't show them the right things to do, they're going to go out and do things that may be harmful to them or others. Does that make sense? And we see this in society all the time. What did we have recently? We had legitimate protests going on, correct? What happened shortly after the protest? Riots. Not necessarily associated other than the fact that one, because the one, others felt like they could do this. You see what I'm saying? And not always the same people. Obviously, not all the people that were protesting were involved in the riots. And not all the people rioting were involved in the protest. Does that make sense? There may have been some overlap in some cases, but they were two distinct events that really the only association they had was because people did this legitimately, these people thought they could get away with doing this. Right? So that's, we get the emotion. These people are getting motivated too in a different way and motivating their people to do whatever they want. Does that make sense? These people are doing the things the right way. It's pushing the limits because they have to, right? You shouldn't have to protest to get your voice heard. But that's unfortunately where we're at sometimes. Does that make sense? But these people, what good is this doing? It's just hurting, tearing things down. It's causing, technically it's causing problems for the people who are trying to get something done and trying to work things out, unfortunately. Okay? Public speaking and general conversation require similar skills. So when you're doing public speaking, there's certain skills that you use that are very similar to what you use when you're just using general conversation. Okay? These are what they are. It's hard to breathe in this thing. It's that moisture. Okay? You have to organize your thoughts logically. When you're doing a speech, you need to organize what you're trying to say in a logical manner. Why?
You don't want to sound like you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't want to sound like you don't know what you're talking about. Otherwise, why are you there talking? Right? What's the other reasons? You want to give them legitimate information that's useful, whether it's an informative speech or a persuasive speech, or any other speech, really. But you don't want to... How many times have you heard a speaker that just rambles all the time? They may start out good, and then they're off. And whether they come back and get to where they're supposed to or not is debatable. Does that make sense? If you organize your speech, if you do it the way you're supposed to do it, you shouldn't get too far off track. Now, when I say all of this, the camera, listen to this. Public speaking and lecturing is not technically the same thing. It is a form of speech, public speaking, but lecturing is a little bit different, and here's why. As an instructor, If I'm trying to give you notes, I am often going to stop and say, do you understand? I personally, when I say that, I want to know that you understand. If you don't understand, I want to know that you don't understand so I can repeat it in a different way to hopefully make you understand. Does that make sense?
It also forces feedback.
It also forces feedback because I'm the type of instructor that wants that feedback from you. Does that make sense? See, I just said it again. There are some instructors that don't want that. I'm not talking about anybody particular here. That's indicated for you guys to know that, yeah, there really is. But there are instructors that don't. How many of you had this? An instructor who gets up here and just reads verbatim from the book. And that's it. You ever had an instructor do that? Not necessarily here, but just somewhere. That's common. Why?
Perhaps they're not confident or experienced or seasoned.
It makes the audience feel that way, doesn't it? If all I can do is read from the book and I can't do anything from just talking, then that makes me as an audience member feel like that person they don't know what they're doing, right? And as a student, does that not turn you off? And you're going to say, I'm not taking this guy again, unless it's an easy A. You see what I'm saying? Because that's typically what happens. If this person has a lot of students in their class, it's because somebody told them it was an easy A. They're not going to teach you anything, but you can easily pass those tests, right? That's just the way some things are. But when we're lecturing, and when we talk about delivery here in just a minute, you'll understand more about this. But as a lecturer, it should be different because we should be prodding you for feedback. Because isn't that our job? If I give you information, is it not my job to try to find out and comprehend it and can spit it back to me, which is where the test comes in, right? So if I'm just going in and just giving you the notes, say, here they are, I hope you got them, and leave you at that, guess what happens? You either get it or you don't get it. Or you do a lot of research and studying to find it somewhere else, when you should have just been able to ask me and I could tell you, even if I had to do it in 10 different ways to get it across. Does that make sense? I think, this is an editorial note, education has gotten away from teaching and gotten more about other things. We need to be teaching you guys how to do things. So you got to organize your thoughts logically. Number 2, you have to tailor the message to the audience. Now, part of that's with the organization. But what's it mean to tailor the message to the audience?
You might want to use certain words with specific demographics, like
Yes.
You wouldn't want to use slang with the Red Hat Society because they might not understand that slang.
Although that might be funny.
Yeah.
Now, but if you're going to use slang in a situation like that, you need to be playing it off of the situation
Right.
to make it more entertaining, right? But let's put it this way. This is a military town. If you tailor your audience to the military, that means you got a good chance that somebody's going to understand it. Not everybody in the audience may understand it, but some of them will, right? I used to teach this class on Fort Bragg all the time. And I go out there, and of course, they're all talking about, hey, I got to go TDY next week. I said, good, I hope that clears up. I didn't know what TDY was when I first got out. I mean, I could have figured it out, but it was like, we don't talk in acronyms outside of the military too much, right? Now I know what it means. Temporary duty station, TDY. Temporary duty what? What's the Y mean?
I think just duty. Yeah.
Duty. See, that doesn't even make sense as an acronym. But you see my point.
That's
I know-
military for you.
Yeah, it is. Well, what's even weirder is the Air Force, because when they were out there, because that's who I mostly had, and every once in a while there'd be an Army person. And now it's all Army, and once in a while there's an Air Force person. But they don't have the same acronyms for the same thing. And it's crazy. The PX or the, MX or whatever?
BX.
BX. It's like, come on, it's the same thing. Just call it a store. Come on. Commissary. Dude.
Post exchange, it's not commissary.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's part of the PX, isn't it?
No, they're two different ones.
Part of the BX. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
One is the retail store, one is the grocery store.
It's crazy either way. Well, call it the grocery store.
Commissary.
You got your post exchange and your base exchange, it depends on where you're at, you want a base or a post.
I got a good one for know your audience. I said online one time, hey, I gotta run to the commissary, and they said, are you in jail? I was like, what? What do you mean?
Commissary.
Because I guess that's what they call it in jail, I don't know.
They don't call that jail.
The stores in jail are.
Penitentiary.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I was like, what? I'm like mom home and apple pie.
But again, that's one of the things. If you're going to talk to military people, you better know the audience you're talking to. Remember, we talked about that earlier. So if you're talking to Army, but you're using Air Force jargon, it's going to cause some confused looks. Those who have been stationed near Air Force or at Air Force will understand it eventually, but you see my point. Tailor the message to the audience. So you really need to do that, and the best way to do it is, again, to know your audience as best you can. Do some research, try to figure out what your audience is. Number 3, tell the story for maximum impact. What does that mean?
Keep it on point, maybe? Keep it on top.
Keep it on point is definitely part of this.
Try to drive your point home as much as you can. You want them, the audience, to leave with.
But how?
Oh, okay, that's what I was gonna say next.
Keep your points short, sweet, and to the point.
Definitely. But what are you, how does that make it the maximum impact? What do we mean by maximum impact? If I'm doing an informative speech,
How much am I digesting of it?
how much is the audience getting of it? And how do we get that across? If it's a persuasive speech, how effective am I at persuading you? Even if I don't persuade you, have I dropped a seed in your mind to make you eventually think twice about it? You see what I'm saying? So we can easily do this in certain things. For instance, if I told you about a wreck I saw, it's like, hey, there was a car, I was coming up behind it, it flipped over, the person came out, and that's the wreck. That's not very effective, is it? But if I said, dude, because that's a good word, dude, that car flipped over 32 times. While it was flipped over in the middle of the air, the person flew out the window, it flipped on over, they flew back in the window. Glass, they had glass everywhere. Car was totally packed. Guy got out with no scratches on him.
So you're saying
That's no, well, that would be lying. But that's maximum impact, is it not? And I'm not saying you have to lie.
You evoked a response, perhaps? Is that what-
I did. But I did it for maximum impact. Right? Now, again, you don't have to lie, you don't have to exaggerate. But it often happens. Hey, I went fishing, caught that big fish. It's really this. But, right? That's maximum impact. It's not necessarily truthful. Now, there is truth in it. I caught a fish. But let's face it. If you're the fisherman and you're always doing this, the people you're telling the story to always knows what it is. But that's getting to know your speaker in that aspect. To tell it for maximum impact, you have to have motivation yourself as a speaker, what you're saying. You have to have enthusiasm for what you're saying. You have to make it sound like this is important. If I just say, oh, there was a wreck, who cares?
Well, your tone changed.
It did.
You used your body language.
I did. I used
You
everything.
more,
And I could have done that without exaggerating and it still would have been good. Right? Because it would have been more impactful because I'm telling you a whole story using everything I've got to tell it. And that makes it more impactful. Does that make sense? Oftentimes what we'll find out is with instructors, and here I'm bashing instructors again, the biggest complaint I hear about teachers from students is not that they didn't teach me, although that becomes what it is that they didn't seem to care about what they were teaching. Doesn't that make sense? And there is. You can all give examples of teachers that we've had that, why am I here? You obviously don't want to be here. You don't care about what you're saying. I see no enthusiasm in what you're doing and saying. But the ones who do show us enthusiasm, we remember them. I can remember teachers from high school something years ago. I said 30, but I don't, it was 30 years ago. But I can remember those teachers because they made an impact, because they had enthusiasm. They cared about what they were doing, and they cared about their students. And that shows to the students, and we don't seem to remember that at times as instructors. Number 4, adapt to feedback from listeners. Adapt to feedback from listeners. So if I'm speaking, I need to be looking at you guys and communicating with you guys so that I understand whether you're getting what I need to get across to you. And if I see that you're not understanding me, I need to adapt to that and try to find a way to get you to understand, even if it takes all night long. We're not going to stay all night long. Yeah, definitely not. Does that make sense to everybody, though? You have to adapt. As a speaker, part of your job is obviously giving the speech and getting that information out. But part of your job is to adapt to what you're getting from the audience. You're hoping that you get something from the audience. There will be times when the audience gives you nothing to work with. Does that make sense?
Did you engage with individuals to try to bring everybody
You
in?
can, depending on the speaker. Again, if you're that teacher that sits up here and just reads verbatim from the book, you're not engaging with those, you're not working with that, adapting to that feedback. Because if you were, the first feedback you'd have is get away from that book, right? Because, tell me if I'm wrong on this. You as students, in your perception of instructors, they were hired because they know what they're doing?
That's what we hope,
Does that give you the indication they know what they're doing? So, now, if they're going and using notes and coming back to their notes just to make sure they're on the right track, that's a different story. That's part of communication. Okay? Now, those were the similarities between public speaking and general conversation. There are differences between them as well, obviously. The first one of these differences is public speaking is more highly structured than general conversation. You can kind of make sense with that without even going on, but we will go on. So what are we talking about? In public speaking, we have time limits. So your speeches in here, how long are they? Did you look that far?
I think
She couldn't get through the module, so I know she doesn't
First
know.
one, I think I said like 2 minutes, 2 to 4 minutes.
2 minutes?
That's what I said.
A short speech like that?
Yeah, it's like 2 to 4 minutes.
2 to 4 minutes is about right. The others would go up to 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 or something. 2 to 4 minutes for an introduction speech is not too bad. Okay? So with the introduction speech, you have a time limit. In general conversation, your time limit is based on how much time each part of the parties involved have. You can talk for hours in the right situation, right timing. Otherwise, hey, I've only got 2 minutes before class. That's my time limit, right? So that's conversation. Time limits. You missed this. This was important. It'll be on the video. Listeners, do not interrupt the voice questions. Typically in a general public speaking situation, if I was hired to speak, you're not supposed to interrupt me. Typically speaking, it's a bad thing. Now, trust me, if I was in the audience and I paid good money to hear somebody speak, there better not be people interrupting that person for any stupid reason. Because I will work my way over to that person and I will make them be quiet. You know what I'm saying? let's face it, if you pay, it's like going to a concert. If you paid to go to a concert to hear certain things, and somebody's being a loudmouth next to you, don't you try to tell them to nicely put to shut up? Oh, I'm sorry, officer, he fell down on his own face. I don't, you know what I'm saying?
So does that mean we shouldn't ask questions?
No, this is a different situation.
Just making sure.
That's why I told you
I
earlier,
talk a lot, that's why I'm asking.
that's why I told you, doing a lecture is not the same as a general public speaking situation. I want you to ask questions. Okay? But that being said, how many teachers don't let you ask questions?
I actually make mine listen to me, so I don't know.
See, you guys should be more like her. She makes them let her ask questions, whether they're willing. Why wouldn't a teacher let you ask questions during a lecture?
Perhaps they're not versed enough on the ability to answer them.
They're
Maybe.
Trying to finish their point before you ask a question.
And oftentimes what they'll say is, hold your question, I'm probably getting ready to answer it. And then guess what? If you don't write down your question, by the time they get to it, you don't remember what the question was. So you don't know if they answered it or not. But how often do we actually write down the question? If I don't get to ask it right now, I don't write it down.
I'll remember it.
Yeah, you will, but most people don't. Or they'll be so embarrassed they don't want to ask later, right? I was that kind of student when I was in school. Not that I typically would ask a question, but if I did say something and I was told not to, hold on, you'll get to, I wouldn't do it again. Because I was a shy kid. Can you believe that? I was shy. I was. Listeners usually react. Oh, public speaking requires more formal language. So it's highly structured, but we also require more of a formal language. Your listeners usually react negatively, probably less so now than they used to slang, jargon, or bad grammar. Wouldn't you agree? How many of us use good grammar all the time? Practically nobody. How many of us know good grammar when we hear it? Everybody. Which means we could all use good grammar if we chose to. We just choose not to. Why?
Lazy?
Some of us are lazy. Some of us don't want trying to look smarter than our friends. Things like that. There's all kinds of things that go into it.
Sometimes it's hard to recall the correct word.
Sometimes. Well, sometimes people will think we're dumb if it takes us a while to process the way it should be said correctly. And if it takes us, and there's pauses in between words, then people are like, come on, spit it out. Right? Slang and jargon. Why not slang? Why can't we use slang in public speaking? What's that?
Broken English,
It's not only broken English, it's not legitimate language.
appropriate,
Yeah. But the worst part about it is, as he mentioned earlier with the Red Hat girls, they're not necessarily going to understand the slang. And not only that, slang can change. Who knows what bling is?
I know what I do.
It's like jewelry, bling, bling, bling.
Diamond.
Is that what you think it is?
Yeah.
I think so, but then I also feel like that's not the right answer, so I just.
Sparkly.
It's a trap.
You asked.
Bling, and I'd have to look back if I could find the right documents or something somewhere. Bling, if I'm not mistaken, started out as shiny jewelry.
Oh.
And then you could get bling on your car. So then it was no longer jewelry, it's just anything shiny that was attached, an attachment, an accessory. And then it was bling bling.
To dress things out.
And now it can be used whatever.
I think also, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
I think also, like, it just depends on where you live too, because.
It does. Slang's different based on the region. Yeah.
It's another language.
Or it may be the same term, but has a different meaning here than it does somewhere else. You know what it means to mac on a girl?
Yeah, same thing. Kiss.
In some places it does, in others it means more than that. It just depends. But again, it's that one thing that if you say it in the wrong crowd, best case scenario is you get a little snicker here and there. Worst case scenarios, they're like, dude, whoa, whoa. Who's he think he is, Clinton? You see what I'm saying? That's the kind of thing that slang does. If not everybody cohesively understands it without any doubt what it means, then it's not useful. What if I say, what's the word I'm thinking of? You're bad.
You're awesome.
Bad is one of those words. Originally it meant you're not good. Then it meant you are good. Then it meant you're awesome. Then it was bad again, not good. Now we don't know. It just depends on how it's being used and who's using it.
And our inflection.
Our inflection, all that
context
stuff.
clues.
The subtext, the body language, all that adds to how we use it to determine whether you're a bad person or a good person.
That's it.
That's sick. That's dope. Dope. They don't use dope for anything else anymore, so we can use it for that now. What's jargon?
You're talking about like the military.
It's like with the military. It's words or terms that are only used for certain groups of people. Doctors have their own jargon. Lawyers have their own jargon. Military has their own jargon. Not just acronyms, but their own jargon. Right? And again, if you're using jargon in a speech, you better identify what it means. Once you've identified it, you can use that term throughout your speech. Does that make sense? So otherwise, don't use it at all. Most public speakers polish their language. Most of us don't use jargon. We don't use bad grammar if we can keep from it. Okay? Public speaking requires a different method of delivery from ordinary conversation. What we're really talking about here is, in general conversation, we can use words like, or phrases such as, like, you know, really, dude, in public speaking, we try to avoid those terms. What does like really mean?
To compare.
It's a comparison between two things. That's not the way we use it. Like the other day, I went to like the store. Does that really tell us anything? I went to the store. Why couldn't we just say that? It's less words. It's easier, quicker. But we have to put like in there every time we turn around.
Unless you're using that in a humorous way.
Like I just did. But that's not what people do. They do it as part of their regular, they just use it as part of their feeling. Yeah. Or, you know, like, you know, I like,
Terrible at that.
When-
That's
a lot of people have that stuff.
so bad.
It's just part of it. Really, like, the other day, I like, you know, like
Like Valley Girl.
a Valley Girl, yeah.
Totally.
Like totally awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And it really, all they're doing is saying nothing. I've always said this, and I should do this. I want to write a speech that only uses like, you know, really, and. Mostly, that's what I want in the speech. Almost everything's those words. It'd be hilarious if done right, but it would absolutely say nothing.
Probably
Yeah.
resonate with the younger crowd. Probably
Except for they'd be like, I'm right with you. I don't know what you said, but I'm right there with you. Yeah. So try to avoid those things. Oh, adapt a casual posture. Effective public speakers adopt a more formal manner of delivery and avoid distracting mannerisms and verbal habits. What are some distracting mannerisms?
The people who snap their fingers and that's it?
The ticking, like especially on T's and P's and B's and stuff. or the end of every sentence. Or, like I mentioned online the other day, how they trail off at the end of the sentence. So you don't hear the last part of the sentence. Or they're monotone all the way through it. Or they talk so fast the whole time nobody understands anything that's being said. There's a lot of verbal habits that we do that are distracting. Most of the time, we're not aware that we're doing them until somebody points it out. There are also some physical things that we do. Those who talk with their hands way too much. This means nothing. But you see people all the time using big gestures and whatever. Those gestures mean nothing unless they have some impact to what's being said. Right? It's okay to use your arms and make gestures, provided those gestures mean something. If they don't mean anything, forget it. How many of you ever seen a pastor or a preacher do this? We need to stay focused. Right? The reason why this means we. This means focus. It's effective communication because the gestures make sense for what's being said. Right? And we can see it. Now, if they did this, we need to stay focused. What's the matter with this? Our focus is off balance. I could have just gone into a sermon right then if I was a preacher, but right? But if it's here, that's balanced. That means we're focused. Most of us would say if we're off balance, we're not focused. Right? Probably. Aren't these better than the notes from the other day? Even though it's basically the same information.
I don't know about anybody else, but I really didn't pay attention to the PowerPoint on Blackboard, just couldn't see it.
You couldn't see it?
No, I'm going to the back, man.
When I was putting it on there, you couldn't see it? What kind of computer are you using? Brighten that screen up. I don't know if it do. I don't know. How big was it?
Pretty big.
She said it was pretty big.
I'm sorry.
You need glasses.
I do. I have glasses. I don't have that.
I thought it
I
Oh,
got old lady eyes
He
going
was
on.
like,
oh.
Yeah.
You need glasses like I got, the progressive things that move, so that I have to go like this on my, so I can figure out where to go.
This was the part when this was you. Like you were such
I was a little bitty guy.
He was the big one on mine.
Oh, you had it flipped. You can,
Okay.
there's something you can do to make them.
Oh, yeah, you were zooming out too.
That's why. That's why.
The center of my universe.
It was like all this was him, or no, all this was the PowerPoint, and then this was him, and then this was like.
She said I was the center of the universe.
You were the center of my universe. That,
Oh,
not everything.
made my day. You got an A from Monday.
We're
This-
all here, we should all get an A.
Oh, yeah, you will. I didn't take a roll, but you will. Everybody gets an A that's here. I'll take roll in a minute. You got a speech next week. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the speech, and then I'll pick up these notes on Monday, my notes, not their notes, which are, again, same information. I'm just going to make it sound better because I don't want to get away from the fact that you guys have to start. Just stay with me. Stay with me. It's okay. All right, good. You just now noticed that?
No, I didn't notice the humming. I thought it was someone's phone. It was,
Yeah, I didn't notice the humming till just now.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's good because it wasn't that distracting then.
that's pretty cool.
All right, let me log into Blackboard.
So I apologize when I didn't know where the text box was when you guys were writing.
Oh,
When
there's
I-
a pink box guy.
Yeah, and I spoke. I didn't realize you had your AirPods in, so that's probably what scares you. 'Cause it sounded like you got scared, and then I just
He
realized.
was joking.
Oh,
Sometimes I overreact just to get a reaction from
Oh,
people.
okay.
Yes.
I thought I legitimately scared, because it would have scared the hell out of me too.
No, trust me, I did not have my earpods on that loud.
Oh.
They were in there for you guys to hear me speak, because I was using it as a microphone.
Plus, we were
I had my
talking
volume
about
down
it.
mostly, and I had everybody else muted.
Uh,
You just came in after I muted everybody, so that's why you weren't muted. This is like public speaking, right?
What's your other class?
Acting for the camera,
Is it?
theater appreciation, fun class, stagecraft.
Any of those.
Those are good ones.
I don't think I
We,
can do that.
we have fun.
It's probably easier than this class.
No, this class is easy. Hey. Now go ahead. I can say it on the, this is for everybody that's paying attention. You guys got lucked out because I'm teaching the class and not some of those others. Not because they're bad teachers, it's just the way I teach things. Different.
Kind of digging it so far.
I make it more entertaining than some of them would. If I think about it, I might cut that out. I may just leave it in. We'll see. This is for all of you three that didn't show up. Yeah, three that didn't show up. You're missing out. We're having so much fun in the rain. Now there's a bird. It stopped raining, there's birds chirping. Or it's a mouse. I don't know which one, but there's something out there.
The park's so far away.
All right, make sure you do the census date thing, even though technically you don't have to, just go ahead and do it.
what's that? What's
It's the one that says census date assignment.
This is
Okay.
coffee house.
It's basically introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself? Okay, that's fine.
Some of you had already done it, but make sure everybody does it.
I think everybody did, didn't they?
I didn't look yet. I mean, I saw some people had done it the last time I looked. I just haven't looked right now. I'm looking at something else right now, okay?
Yes.
I'll look at that in a minute. Did there 8 people in there?
I'm checking it right now for you.
Okay.
I got you covered.
Everybody's counted here because you were the only one not here Monday. Everybody else is here.
7 total
Monday.
posts, that means somebody did.
That means somebody hasn't done it.
I did.
It's one of those 3 that's not here. Slackers. I didn't say that to you. I'll cut that part out. Maybe I won't. I don't know. So, speech 1, it's 10% of your grade. That determines whether you make an A or not. 2 to 4 minutes. That's way too short, right? Don't you think so? You think it's too long?
It's so long.
I know that.
2 to 4 minutes is not long.
But what do I have to share about myself that's 2 to 4
I can barely
minutes?
say my name in 2 minutes.
You just talk real slow for 2 minutes.
Still learn to speak slower.
Yeah, you can do it. It'll be all right. You have to turn in a typed transcript of your speech. So what we're talking about, a transcript is the written speech, the way you intend to say it. You do not have to deliver the speech that way. But you have to have it typed out word for word the way you intend to say it. We'll talk about delivery of speeches on Monday when we meet online. And I'll talk about the different ways to deliver a speech.
I have a question. You said 3 points, 3 main points. So.
3 to 5 key points, yeah.
3 to 5 key points. So if they are related to each other, what's my question? I'm trying to give you a.
That's what I'm saying. What's your question?
Hey,
All right, so let's say it's an introductory, you're introducing yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so your key points would be 3 things about yourself that you want to tell us.
Okay.
Not necessarily that relate, but they could.
Well, I'm just trying to get 2 to 4 minutes worth of crap like you're talking about.
All right, here's 2 to 4 minutes worth of crap. You ready?
Sorry.
It's about yourself. That could be a number of things. You could tell us about your academic life when I was in public school, from little tyke up to high school. What did I do? Maybe I was an athlete, maybe I wasn't, maybe I did this, maybe I didn't. Maybe I was the guy that sat in the back, tell jokes, and nobody knew I was there. And then when they say, who said that? I'll be, okay. I was the one that in the English class, nobody ever wanted to read, and so he made us all read chapters out of the book or whatever. So none of us wanted to read. And half of us weren't paying attention. Not me, obviously. And she'd call on like me. So when I hear my name, there were 2 Dennis Johnsons in the classroom. And I have an identical twin brother. All three of us were in that same class. So when she'd call my name, I'd wait until the other one answered. And she'd say, well, that's great, Dennis, but I wanted the other Dennis to read. And then I'd say, Dwayne, she's asking you to read. So he'd start reading. Because he wasn't paying attention either. And then we'd say, Brian, read. A friend of ours, because, yes, ma'am.
It's gonna sound a little silly, but I'm trying to still get caught up. So we have the
Census assignment, yeah.
We have the 5 quizzes.
Whoa, I didn't have anything to do with this.
You should short.
Take
You know why?
responsibility for these actions.
You know why?
Why?
It's because it's an 8-week class instead of 16
I
week.
understand it's accelerated.
Crazy.
But those,
And also, we have the speech, the 2 to 4 minute speech.
Yeah, that's a
along
short
with
one.
Along with the
transcript.
transcript, yes, there we go. So that's all our assignments for week 1.
Don't get me saying yes.
Yes, that is the answer.
That sounds,
What? There's
that
5
sounds-
quizzes for
Yeah.
week one?
what?
I just found
What?
out too.
Let me tell you, here we go, in his words.
You want one start now?
It's due
Dude.
Sunday, too.
Dude, where you been? Hold on.
Tomorrow?
No, there's.
No, yes,
What is today?
Sunday.
Literally.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Hold on, let me look.
Why?
And actually, if you really think about it,
Every
by
week.
Wednesday, you really do have more quizzes than you want.
Hey,
Yeah, 'cause it starts
hey, hey,
all over.
hey, 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 hey.
Then you get the school attendance.
So here's the summary of assignments. There's a discussion forum, that's the census dat thing. Reading assignment. Carefully review the chapters covered. There's only 5 chapters, no big deal. They're short too, they're only like 50 pages each. They're not really, I don't know how many pages they
They're
are.
long.
They can't be, the whole book's only like 200 pages.
Dude, my book is 500 and something pages.
What kind of book did you get? You got the wrong book.
I ain't even got
How many
the
pages is
yet.
that?
400.
Just lie and tell it's 200 and something.
I'm not.
How many is it? How many?
I think like 400 something.
400 something. See, yours is wrong.
502.
5, shh.
502.
Yeah, but you don't read every page. Some of those are like, some are like this chapter, chapter 1. That's a page. You don't read that. There's like 40 chapters. That's 40 pages you don't read. Am I right?
Okay,
No.
Is there a page that says this chapter 1?
we're back to census.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
So you
see?
got the preface.
The preface, you don't read
and then
that.
all the stuff in between,
Yes, you have the
don't
census,
The reading material.
the reading, the 5 chapters, all short ones, I'm sure.
My ass.
Chapter quizzes.
Yeah.
My,
Remember when we talked about not using slang and bad grammar
no, I'm
and,
not public speaking.
oh. Yeah, but I know, but if it's coming out now,
It does, and I'm sorry, and I
That's
will
all
have
right.
to pay attention to that.
There's 5 quizzes.
can we get back to this, okay? 5 quizzes, there's 5 quizzes. They're only 20 questions each, it's not a big deal.
But that's,
You get to take it twice, too. You can take it, that's 100 questions.
that's all. That's okay.
That's, come on, I didn't write the questions.
Okay.
And they're not verbatim.
Hey, I can't help that either. There's the chapter quizzes, so there's 5 of those. View all videos in the module, 42.
Wait, view, what do you mean?
No, there's only 2 videos in the module.
What do you mean view all, what does that mean?
See this Ted's Secret, the great public speaking? That's one of the videos.
That's not a slide.
And then,
What
no,
do
it's a
you-
video.
I'm joking.
Sample introduction speech, those
how'd you
2.
get to this?
That's module.
They're in module 1. So I clicked on module 1.
And all this popped up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then
it did for him too.
I've already
There's
said-
something wrong with your computer.
Yeah, it'll tell you like, it'll give you like,
Yeah, it says module introduction. Every module starts with module
Can she come over
introduction.
here and look at the computer? Is that okay with you, if she comes over?
Sure.
Can I see?
You have module summary?
I promise I haven't seen any of this.
Alright,
To get back to what you were asking,
so, what we
view all videos in module, there's only 2 videos.
Okay.
And work on your speech of introduction, which we're gonna do next week,
download.
next Wednesday, so you have a week to do the speech.
Okay, so we did
So,
watch
On the speech, I have to type it up and send it to you, but I'll do the speech here in class,
Yeah, you can give me the speech
or I can send
at
it to
time.
you.
Okay.
You can send it to me or you can give it to me in class. I don't
Okay,
care.
got it.
It's better if you just email it to me, because then I've got a digital copy, I'm not gonna lose it. Yeah.
I guess so, that,
All right.
on it. Now,
So
when it
you
comes to
said
chapter
that
quizzes,
we
these are
print it
all
out and get like, or email it to you, whatever, but it doesn't have to be
These are all,
that way when when you say that they're safe, correct?
Right, let me wait till they're available, and I'll address that.
Yeah.
Did you see it now?
Yeah.
Can I show you what I was talking about right here though?
Sure.
I'm,
I already saw there's 500 pages.
So, like, for example, it's already, what is it, you printed it?
You printed all that out?
yeah, you printed the,
That's way overkill.
the syllabus.
Underneath my age, okay? One way or another.
Ink is expensive, it's like
Yeah, it is.
$35.
Yeah, well, I don't do
I'm
it.
an old lady, I can afford it.
Yeah,
Man, so I didn't click on the button that takes you.
to the
I
module.
didn't know there was a download,
Yeah, I
I
didn't-
didn't, yeah.
So do
Oh,
you guys know how to take the quizzes? Are you new students?
Yes, this
Yeah,
is.
I'm
Okay.
great.
Hold on.
So after class.
hold on, let me,
I'm gonna do this.
okay, I was gonna say, let me pause this so nobody gets,
I'll hit you up after class.
Okay.
That makes me nervous because
You got this, I
I
promise.
thought I did all the assignments.
By the
in
way-
classes this week. I probably did.
by the way, each quiz you can take at least twice,
And they are the exact same questions,
Yeah.
each time.
yes.
Do
Not,
they just keep the higher grade?
Yes.
Yes.
Or is it the last grade?
No, it's the highest grade.
Okay.
I promise you got this, okay? Don't be intimidated by it.
It's not gonna be as difficult as it sounds.
And
The only
don't-
thing that's really difficult about this class is it's 8 weeks instead of 16.
Okay.
So you're really putting 16 weeks worth of content into 8 weeks.
And if you bomb
And
a
that's fine.
quiz, it's only 20% combined, so all of these tests together.
Or like,
combined
or
equal-
like 2% of the,
Yeah, so if
each.
you bomb one, it's not the end
Yeah.
of the world.
Okay. That makes sense.
and I'm open for extra credit if somebody needs it at that point,
Okay.
so.
It's just a learning curve, cause it's been a while since I've been back in school, so I just like.
See, here's another advantage you have over the online class. There's only 8 of you. We can even on the longer speeches, which it says are the, does it say, where does it say that on there? I saw it a minute ago.
Everybody in this class is gonna make an A. You're gonna make an A as long as you do it.
Oh, yeah. But even on the longer speeches, which are like 8 minutes or something, 8 times 8 is what, 64? That's not even, that's an hour. It's a 2.5 hour technically class. That means we could easily do all 8 speeches in one night. That means if we wanted to do an extra credit speech, we've got more than enough time over the next 7 weeks to do that.
I like that.
Does that make sense? And the reason I do extra credit as a speech is because that's what you're learning anyway. But I usually do the extra credit speech is usually something like a demonstrative or demonstration speech, where you demonstrate how to do something, or, because those tend to be more entertaining and fun for us, even the ones doing them. So that's what we'll work towards. But technically, there's 4 speeches, so every 2 weeks, there's a speech due. Got it? First one is this one, because that's the easiest one to prepare and do, because it's about yourself. And just do yourself. Don't worry about interviewing somebody else in the class. Just do yourself. Because I think that was an option or something. The next one is probably the informative speech. I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Then there's the persuasive speech. That's the big one. That's the one worth the most points. That's 6 weeks from now when we do it. Yes. And then the last speech, which would be on the last night, would be the special occasion, or sometimes it's called a special occasion, sometimes it's called a ceremonial speech.
Like
So-
a wedding speech?
Could be a best man or a bridesmaid,
Would that be your benediction?
could be a benediction. There's all kinds of, it's called special occasion because it only happens at special occasions. So, that's the easiest speech too, besides this one. Some people think it's the hardest one because it's a little more difficult to think of a certain type of speech or something like that, but it's really not. The persuasive speech is probably the most intense, because you're picking a topic that chooses a side on something, and you're trying to convince people to your side.
Are we writing both sides?
Say that again?
Do we write both sides on that?
When we get into persuasive speaking, the notes on that, you'll find out that the best way to get somebody on your side is to look at what the arguments are for the other side and try to poke holes at it. Not to totally ignore their side. It's to why are they on this side and why this is wrong. And that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Not by lying or anything. You use facts for everything. But we'll talk about facts and opinions and that kind of stuff next week on Monday, as well as we'll talk about the different ways to deliver a speech. Ceremonial speech, impromptu speech, and those things. It's not on the list of the type of speeches that you're going to give because it's not really a speech that can be graded. Because impromptu means you don't have any time to research it, you don't have time to do anything, you're just, here, talk about global thermonuclear war, do it. You don't have time, yeah, do it. You don't have time to think about it, you just expected to do it. And so there's really no way to gauge that because unless this person's an expert on something, they're not going to necessarily know. They're just making it up as they go. And they're not going to be able to necessarily quote statistics that are legitimate. They're going to be guessing the whole time. Typically, you don't ask somebody to do an impromptu speech unless it's a topic that we know they have some knowledge of. Otherwise, it's pointless. It's like getting on Facebook. I mean, think about it. You get on Facebook, everybody's got an opinion about everything. And it's usually wrong. Or maybe it's just the people I know. Not all of you. My wife's on there, so it's okay. All right, but does that make sense to everybody? Does that help? So the modules, if it gets too much to be too much, I didn't say this out loud. If it gets to be too much, do the things worth the most points first. Right? Obviously, the speeches are worth the most points. The speech papers, whether you're writing a transcript, an outline, or whatever you're doing for each speech, that's important because that's a bigger grade. The quizzes totally add up to a big grade. But I'm not saying don't do the work, but postpone some of it to a time when you have more time. If that's what you have to do.
What's like the format you want for like the paper that we turn in? Like,
I'll do that on Monday.
okay.
There should also be a rubric in the.
There is.
So there's a guideline in the.
Isn't that stuff you didn't see before that you can see now? Yeah,
If I'm not mistaken, it even breaks it down into how the scoring goes on it.
it does. I need to look at that part. It'd
I'm
be
sure
nice.
you'll do it your own way.
It'd be nice if I scored it semi-close to the way they want you. No, I probably have used that rubric before, it's whether they've changed it or not, I don't know. But I will probably use that rubric as a, more or less as a form to fill out to go, to give you guys feedback that way. And then I'll write in my own little notes wherever as needed. I probably won't give you, I'll give you general feedback in class after everybody's given the speeches, not to pick on any one particular person, but then I'll give you your sheets by the next day through email or something, or through Blackboard or whatever. But does that make sense? Because the general notes, let's face it, if I see somebody do something that's not necessarily the best way to do it or is wrong, the best way to address that is to let everybody know so that they know not to do it as well the next time. Because sometimes if something goes on and I don't say anything about it, somebody said, well, they did this, so let's try that next time.
In other words, you're gonna give us a generic feedback that.
I'll give you both. You're going to get generic feedback that's for everybody based on what I see going on, and then I'm going to give you individual feedback based on your own speeches.
What if we take it personal and it's not meant for us?
Then I gave you hers instead of you. No. Don't take anything personal. That's the whole point of this. Is it's not necessarily just about you. It's about the process as well. Just like during that time, I may address the audience as well as the speaker, because that's part of the job too. So if you're nodding off during a speech, that tells us something. That sounds like a good place to stop. It's actually later than I intended. I'm stopping the video now, people. You can go home.